Hey everybody, Questwise here. My cup of coffee, and we're here for another sort of review, I guess. More of a love letter to to a game I really love. Excuse me. Good stuff there. All right. So for this video, I had a lot of different things planned, and I was talking to my friend Mr. Mean, John Pollock, on YouTube, bouncing some ideas off of him, some ideas I wanted to do for some videos. And while I was sitting here at the desk cleaning up some stuff, I came across this game. I haven't run it in years, but it's always been one of my favorite games. And I warned you before that I'd be going back to some of my favorite games, and you'd have to suffer through some of these reviews and stuff as well. But this one is still in print. This one is still available to the public. Has a great variety of stuff to pick from, and has a pretty decent following, good following. I don't know how much they played this particular part of the game, but the game itself that I want to talk about today is Palladium Fantasy Role-Playing by Palladium Books. They are out of Detroit, Michigan, formerly of Troy, Michigan, I believe, but they publish out of Detroit, Michigan now. This is the fantasy version of their rules. This is the fantasy game of their system, of the Palladium system, the Megaverse system. Why this book? You're probably asking yourself, all right, Questwise, of all the games out there, why Palladium Fantasy? Why is this your favorite game? Here's why. Let me take you back in time a little bit. Let me tell you a little story about the origins of my role-playing career, my role-playing history of how I got into this all. I was about 14 years old. I lived and still live currently in northern Michigan. And in the summer times, I would sometimes travel downstate, down to southern Michigan to visit family. I had a lot of cousins that lived down in the area, and I would go and visit them for entertainment during the summertime. One day, while we were there, my cousin's friend stopped over, and he said, I have a new game I want you guys to try out. I've never tried this before. It's brand new, or fairly new to him. Pretty new to that time period as well. And he wanted to try it out. I was up for games. I love games. I was thinking it was going to be some sort of a new board game, maybe some, a version of Yahtzee, whatever. And he pulls out a book. It was called Heroes Unlimited. And at that time, I'd also been a very big fan of comic books. Northern Michigan was kind of a hard place to find a lot of the cool stuff, but they did have one grocery store that carried a variety of different comic books, mostly Marvel, a few Image things at that time as well, early stuff like Spawn, those kind of things. So I've been a big fan of comic books, and he pulls out this game called Heroes Unlimited, and he begins to show us how to create our own characters. And he shows us that I can create characters that are either based on some of my favorite characters from comic books or one of my own devising. That set the spark of the role-playing hobby in my heart at that point. I was about 14 years old. When I realized that I could take the stories that I had loved already and bring them to life, create my own, build my own universes, my own worlds, that really sparked it in me. Heroes Unlimited was the superheroes role-playing game produced by Palladium Books. Still in print today. A few weeks went by, and my cousin had, because he had been, he was a fan as well too, not quite as intrigued or enthralled by the game as I was, but he was having fun with it. His mom went and bought him a book, and because it said Palladium. He was a fan of the superhero aspect of it. Now, Palladium covers, if you haven't checked out Palladium, please go check out their Palladium books. Google that, find them, look at their catalog of stuff. Amazing, amazing stuff. I'm sure most of you have already heard of Palladium. So I'm not going to go into a full discussion of their company and their history and such, but so my cousin receives a book from his mom, and because it says Palladium, she believes it's part of this game. Now, again, I don't want to go into a lot of specifics, but it is. All their books use the same rules system with a few slight variations and tweaks here and there, particularly when you get into rifts. They use mega damage, which, sort of trumps regular structural damage capacity. Anyhow, that's a video for another time. She buys him this book, Adventures in the Northern Wilderness. And he's instantly upset because this book is not filled with superheroes. This is a supplement which is now, unfortunately, out of print. My wife graciously was able to find a copy of this for me. I had lost this for many, many years, and she was able to find a copy online for me in great, amazing condition. Anyhow, back to the story. Getting sidetracked again. So he was instantly upset because this wasn't part of the superhero group, or the game. So he turns to me and says, "Hey, you got $10? I'll sell you this book." This Keith Parkinson art right here, this instantly pinged something in my brain, something in my heart. This scene, this foggy, sort of foresty scene, I knew this scene. I lived the scene. I was from northern Michigan, in the northern wilderness. I had seen mornings like this, with the spring when the snow is starting to melt and the fog sort of bleeding through the forest. This captured me as a 14-year-old in my imagination in a way that I will never, ever forget. I took this book home and I read every page of it over and over and over again. Now, in northern Michigan, at that time when I was 14 years old, need more coffee apparently, there wasn't a lot of stuff in northern Michigan. There was nobody who carried Palladium Fantasy at that time, or any of the Palladium books series at that time. And so I came home and I had to settle for, sounds weird, I had to settle for Dungeons and Dragons, at that time, 2nd edition. Now, I had been a fan of fantasy, always been a fan of fantasy, in comics and books, not so much in movies at that time. There wasn't a lot of that. So I picked up the D&D Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, the Monster Manual, a bunch of the other things, and began to try to find people at my school who would play, and I found a few kids who were interested, and we played in the library during lunchtime. The typical nerds, that time, the 80s. But there was still something missing. Now, D&D holds a very special place in my heart because I spent a lot of time with it. And I grew to love history and went on to study history in college because of games like D&D, who taught me more about history than most of my public school education did. But there was still something missing. There was something that I just couldn't quite find in D&D that kept drawing me back to this. And so eventually I was able to score a copy of actually the 1st edition of the Palladium role-playing game, the fantasy role-playing game, back with this great, fantastic art and stuff. So this was my first official sort of entry into the Palladium world. And then a few years later, I was able to, in addition to buying things like Rifts and Heroes Unlimited and a gamut of other types of games, I finally got, 2nd edition came out, and I grabbed this copy. As you can see, it's pretty well worn. I've been through this thing many, many times. The cover is starting to peel a little bit here in the front, but it's my old faithful. I take this with me a lot of different places, and I love this company and was reinvigorated by this company. I'd kind of been put on the back burner for a while due to other games coming out, and my collecting horrible hoarding habit of role playing games. So they've been put kind of on the back burner for a little bit, and my love for them was reinvigorated again when I last year I was able to go to a convention called Grand Con, which is in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I think I mentioned it in the last video too, if you were listening carefully there. And Palladium had a booth there, and I got to meet Kevin, who owns the company, and I got to play in a game with him, which was fantastic, and was able to spend a couple hours just sitting and chatting with him as well too. But the thing that really, really reinvigorated my love for the hobby, and meeting Kevin and telling him that how much of a fan I was, and how it was his game that sort of sparked my passion as a role player was great. But the guys in the booth, Chuck and Wayne, were phenomenal. Their passion for the game really shone through in everything that they were doing. They turned me on to a few of the games put out by Palladium that I had never checked out before. Most notably, Splicers, and Chaos Earth, which is the sort of the prequel to Rifts. And so when I started talking to them, and I got to play in a game of Palladium Fantasy with Kevin, and it just really reinvigorated me for this game, and it really brought out to me why I love this game so much. The game is easy. I hear a lot of people online talk about the game and say that the game's too difficult, the rules don't make any sense, that they're clunky, that there's no coherency to the rules, that it takes too long to create characters. So I went back and I started playing with this game again. I would love to bring it to a table. It's been a while since I've been able to play a game of it, do any one-shots. I plan to rectify that very soon. In fact, I'm planning on taking this to a couple conventions that are coming up soon to make sure that I can share my love for this game with other people. But I started to re-look at this game and try to figure out what it was that they were talking about, try to figure out why they don't feel that this game sort of holds up in today amongst the D&D 5th edition or any of the other fantasy games that are currently Pathfinder, those kind of things. And when I looked at it, re-looked at it, I don't see why it doesn't stand up. Let me rephrase that. I think it does still stand up with the greats. Here's why. I am a big fan of D&D 5th edition. Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, I think, is a great throwback. It reminds me a lot of my days spent playing 2nd edition. But I think that there's things in there that make it a little bit more difficult to bring to a new crowd. Now, they've done some fantastic things. Don't get me wrong. Again, another time for that in a different video. Well, the great things that they've done to try to reinvigorate the love of the hobby and bring new people into the hobby. But I think that Palladium Fantasy has that sort of heroic feel right out of the gate. When you play D&D, you start off as a first level character, and you're weak. You're a first level character. In Palladium, you do the same thing. There's first level, but you tend to have a very sort of heroic feel to your character. It's more of a high fantasy sort of epic kind of feel, which I like. I like to be able to feel empowered at the table, that I can do things that I can't do in normal life. First level characters in other games sometimes feel like average people. When I play role-playing games, I play role-playing games because I don't want to be an average person anymore. I want to be able to do fantastic things that I can't do in real life. I feel that Palladium Fantasy does that. I think it pushes that first level just a little bit above where everybody else is at first level in other games, and gives you a little bit more of a heroic, epic feel. The game is based on a D20. It's very simple. It does things a little bit differently. In most games, you roll a D20, you add some modifiers, and then you're trying to hit a target number. Higher is better. Higher is always better. In Palladium, how this works is you roll a D20, and anything 5 or above is a hit. You hit your target. The Now this is for combat, I should say combat, because using skills is a little bit different. I'll get into that in a second, and I really, really, really dig the way the Palladium does skills, because to me it makes a lot of sense. Anyhow, back to combat. You roll a d20, a 5 or above is a hit. You scored a hit. Anything less than that is a miss. Now, if the creature you're attacking, or the villain, the bad guy, has armor, say he has an armor rating of, he's wearing armor, and he has an armor rating of, say, 12. That now pushes your roll to actually inflicting damage on him to a 12 or higher. Now, if you roll anything between a 5 and a 12, it's still a hit, but you're going to do damage to the armor he's wearing. And a lot of times in these games, the armor has its own set of hit points, because, as it makes sense to me, when you attack and hit somebody with armor, eventually the armor is going to give way. It's going to fall apart. It's going to lose its fortitude. Anyhow, if the armor rating is 12 and you roll above a 12, you bypass the armor somehow. You found a chink in the mail. You found a hole in the neck area somehow, and you do damage directly to the villain's hit points themselves. Simple. That's the majority of it. There are other things that kind of play into things. There are other modifiers to add, different things like that. But all in all, that is the basics of combat. That's it. Simple. Very easy to teach somebody. Now, when it comes to skills, and I just told you how much I love the skill system, because the way the Palladium does skills, to me, seems very, very, very intuitive. It uses a percentile system, so 2d10, or, one representing tens, one representing single digits, and you roll them together. With these, you're trying to roll low. If you have you have climbing skill at 45%, you need to roll under 45%. To me, that makes sense. I have a 45% chance to climb a wall. I've always found the percentile systems very intuitive. Call of Cthulhu uses that, and I find that very welcoming, very friendly, very comfortable. And I love that Palladium does that with their skill system. You'll find the traditional stuff in here. You'll find elves, you'll find dwarves, you'll find gnomes, you'll find orcs. It's got a lot of that stuff. It does have a built-in campaign world, and it's beautifully done. It has captured my imagination for all these years now. Especially, and then they have splat books for the different regions. I call them splat books, supplements for the different regions. Unfortunately, again, I keep going back to this one. It is out of print, but again, Northern Wilderness. There is one in print, though. It's still called The Further Adventures in Northern Wilderness. You can still get that. I believe there's one called The Wolf and Empire. I just pulled out a couple just to show you today. I didn't pull out the whole collection. There are many, many, dozens and dozens. Another one of my favorites, Byzantium. Very, very cool stuff. Great map and stuff on the back here. This is sort of the northern part of the world, north of the Northern Wilderness. I want to show you some of this interior art and stuff as well too. The layout, the other thing too, and I talked to Kevin about this when I was Kevin, again, the owner of the company, when I was at his booth at Grand Con, and I said there's something magical about these books that they just sort of almost everything is soft cover, paperback cover. There's a few exceptions to that. The Riffs book, I believe, is hardcover. But they're soft cover, but there's something about them that they lay perfectly in your hand. So no matter where you're at in the book, it lays very, very well, and it feels really good in your hand. And he told me that was designed. That was a design decision that they made, so that that the book felt very comfortable in your hand. Now the layout on these is generally 2-column, double column pages. Lots and lots of text in here, lots of history, lots of great writing. They do freelance out to some writers and artists and stuff. The main company themselves is actually kind of small run, but they do a lot of freelance work. This was by Glenn Evans. This is a supplement for the to the fantasy role-playing game. I wanted to show you some of this artwork. If I could just show a quick picture. There's one I was kind of... Yeah, I love this picture. Here it is. There you go. Alright. This is one of the sea serpents that you're going to encounter while you're in the Byzantium area. There's a big sea between the northern wilderness and this area, and it's filled with sea monsters and horrible creatures and stuff. So again, there's a variety of different stuff out there for the thing, right? And it covers everything. There's dragons, there are elves, like I said, I mentioned. There's everything you're going to love about the traditional fantasy tropes, but with an amazing game world behind it, and a very simple and intuitive game system as well, too, rules system as well. Character creation, again, I find it very simple. I've heard a lot of people online say that it's very, it takes a long time, and it's very sort of hard. You're flipping back and forth between the books. I made a character last night. The first time I made a character in several years, and it took me about 20 minutes, and that was because I was kind of fumbling. I feel like if I did another one today, it would take me 10-15 minutes. Again, so character creation, not bad at all compared to some other games that are out there right now. Pathfinder, I'm looking at you. It takes a long time. So what do you need to get into the game? This is it. This is right here. This has everything you really need. It has all the rules for character creation. It has all the rules for combat. It has all the rules for magic and psionics. Yes, there are psionics in this game in fantasy. I know, in fantasy. So all of that stuff's in here as well too. There's lots of creatures and stuff in here as well. A great history of the world. Everything you need to start playing right away is in this book. Then you can branch out into others like this, like Byzantium, and there are dozens and dozens of others. Please check out their website for a full listing of that. And support these guys, especially and the other dear thing to me is because I live in Michigan and they're a Michigan-based company, I love to help them out as well too. But that's not the only reason. There are lots of other Michigan companies that I don't support because I don't think they're so great. Palladium, top of the list. So please check it out. You can find their stuff online, but I highly other places online, but I highly recommend you going directly to them to get your stuff. They do a great job of packaging, getting stuff out to you as soon as possible. I've told you why I love the game. Why would you love the game? I think because if you love fantasy as much as I do, and fantasy is my go-to genre when it comes to gaming. I really dig fantasy. Now, I'll play science fiction and stuff, but fantasy is my gig. So if you're a fantasy lover as well too, I think there's a lot of stuff in here for you. If you love heroic fantasy, if you love epic fantasy, it's in here. This is the game you're looking for. It's a fairly cheap price point to come by. I believe this book, $25 entry into this. So this is half the price of a D&D book, and it's twice as big. Pardon the stains and stuff. This is my table copy that I use with me every day. So go check it out. Palladium Fantasy. Keep an eye out for. I'm going to try to do some live play reviews of this as well too, but this is the game. If you're a fantasy lover, check this out if you haven't already. Or, like me, go back, rediscover it, and you'll find out why you picked it up in the first place. Anyhow, video's long enough as it is. Got another one coming up in a couple of days. Thanks, everybody. I'm Questwise, and we're out.